Basics with Babish and my website, basicswithbabish.com, are brought to you by Squarespace. Head there now to check out all of the recipes from the show, kitchen equipment lists, and more. Get 10% off your first Squarespace order with offer code BABISH, whether you need a domain, website, or online store. Make your next move with Squarespace. Okay, so today we're making Tres Leches Cake, which starts with what is essentially a chiffon cake. So we're starting by separating 10 egg whites from 10 egg yolks. Make sure there's no bits of shell hanging around. Set the yolks aside while we place the whites into the bowl of a stand mixer and beat on high speed while adding 1 cup of sugar slowly and whisking using the whisk attachment to stiff peaks, creating a meringue that we're going to fold into our final cake batter. Then in a separate bowl, we are beating together the yolks with 1 cup of sugar, mixing on medium speed for about 2 minutes until thin and pale and ribbony. And lastly, we can begin negotiating our dry ingredients. In a large bowl, we are combining 9 3/4 ounces of all-purpose flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of salt. Tiny whisk together and set aside so we can add 2/3 of a cup of milk to our egg yolk mixture, along with a teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract or vanilla paste. Mix until completely combined, add the dry ingredients, mix until completely combined, and then it's time to add the egg white meringue. First, we're going to give our bowl a good scrape, make sure there's no clumps of anything hanging out, and then we're going to add the meringue, folding in gently, taking care not to deflate the egg whites. Keep going till no streaks of egg white remain. Now it's time to get our pans ready. Take a big old sheet of parchment paper like this and cut it into a perfect square. Then we're going to fold repeatedly on the diagonal until we have a nice wedge of parchment paper that we can press into the bottom of our 10-inch cake pan, make a nice little indentation where the edge of the pan is, cut along that indentation and open to reveal a perfectly round sheet of parchment paper that fits our pans like a glove. Next up, we're going to lubricate the pans with a little bit of vegetable oil before pressing the parchment paper down and filling about halfway with our cake batter. Spread nice and smooth over top, scrutinize for evenness, rectify any inequalities between the two pans before baking at 350 degrees for 25 to 35 minutes. Just enough time to make a simple dulce de leche. Into a medium saucepan goes 1 1/4 cups of sugar, 4 cups of milk, along with a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Whisk gently to combine over medium heat until it comes to a rolling boil. At that point, we're going to lower the heat and simmer for a monstrous hour and a half, whisking frequently to prevent scorching and waiting patiently for the milk fats to caramelize and turn a rich golden brown. I bet you guys can smell this just by looking at it. This stuff rocks. Once the desired color and consistency have been achieved, we're going to strain through a fine mesh sieve and allow to cool completely at room temperature for at least 1 hour. Meanwhile, our cakes are at the oven and a cake tester inserted into the center of the cake emerges clean as a whistle. Let these guys cool in the pans for at least 1 hour. Run a butter knife around the outside edge and invert onto a cooling rack. Remove the parchment paper, and then this guy's going right back where he started. Back into the pan he goes. Because now it's time for the Tres Leches part of Tres Leches Cake, which of course roughly translates to 3 leches, which I think spiritually at least means milk. 3 kinds to be precise: 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk, 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk, and 4 ounces worth of whole milk. Combine in a large bowl and tiny whisk together until homogeneous. Then finally, it's time to let everybody get to know each other. First, impale your cakes with a myriad of fork stabs and begin ladling the Tres Leches mixture over top. It's going to seem like a lot of liquid, but just keep going. It will soak up every single last drop. We are then covering these and refrigerating them for at least 6 hours, preferably overnight. The next day, and we are making some simple whipped cream topping by combining 8 ounces of heavy whipping cream, a couple tablespoons of sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract in the bowl of a stand mixer. Beat on high speed until we get some nice stiff peaks, and voila, whipped cream. If you ask me, this makes it Cuatro Leches Cake. You could also garnish the cake with a little sprinkle of cinnamon, but I like using thinly sliced strawberries. And so now it's time for assembly. Let's invert one of the cakes onto a plate. Whoa! Top with some whipped cream. Go ahead and scrape it off because we remember that we want to start with dulce de leche. Put down a layer of that. Now hit it with the whipped cream. Go ahead and make sure that's nice and smooth and even because we are making a layer cake. Invert that onto the whipped cream and then it's time to decorate. The cake looks a bit of a mess as is, so we're definitely covering the top with another layer of whipped cream, arranging our strawberries on top in a decorative fashion, and pouring a generous pool of dulce de leche in the center. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, this cake is falling apart, disaster is imminent. Well, you are absolutely right. Making a Tres Leches layer cake is pretty difficult because it's a very soft cake, and you should probably only try to do it if you're a better baker than I am, that is to say, an even moderately decent baker. Let's go for a more traditional and slightly more foolproof single layer Tres Leches. You might also want to do this on a cake stand, but I couldn't find mine, so here we are doing it on the table, no big deal. Frost it all over with the whipped cream and a slightly more decorative zigzag pattern of the dulce de leche. definitely liking this infinity strawberry pattern, so we're going to do that again. And there you have it, a beautiful single layer Tres Leches cake. This cake is easy to make, lovely to look at, and has a nice, simple, refreshing flavor perfect for the summer. Also, if you're like me and you think there's nothing worse in the world than a dry cake, obviously this should assuage your fears. This cake is beyond moist, it's been soaking in milk for God's sake. So if you want to impress your friends at the upcoming picnic or maypole ritual or chickenpox party, look no further than Tres Leches cake. Hope you guys all give it a try for yourselves, and happy summer. This episode and many others have been sponsored by Squarespace because they've been an amazing partner in both bringing this show and my websites to life. They've got a really intuitive, easy-to-use platform that made it super easy for someone like me who's never done web design, ever. They have templates, they do domains, they have really good customer service. It's basically a one-stop shop for building a really slick website. If you want to try it for yourself, you can start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter in offer code Babish to get 10% off your first purchase.